Alright. Hello and welcome back to my little series of book review videos, as it were. This is my second video for Star Trek Lives, a book that was given to me as a Christmas present, and it's been so significant and worthy of sharing. Just wanted to make a series of videos about it, covering the most significant parts of the book to me. At the time of this filming, I have actually finished reading the book. And there are definitely a few chapters I'm not going to bother reviewing, the last chapter being one of them. But, this stuff means so much to me. And, a book from 1975 is probably not known by too many of you these days, so I can safely assume that I'm sharing information you wouldn't otherwise get. And I went out of my way to get as much of my sci-fi corner in the video. I couldn't quite manage the angle, but my space camp certificate for completion is up there. I just use it as a anyway. What I wanted to share with you today is chapter 2 of the book, maybe the second best chapter of the book for me. It's called The Tailored Effect, and I actually gave a homily a few months ago about this when I first started reading it. And what this chapter is largely about is that, here he goes, I'm going to start by quoting page 36. The secret of mass appeal has always been to please many people mildly, or at least not to displease them greatly. The secret to devotion has been to please a few people but please them intensely, to tailor your material to hit them precisely where they live. And the problem, they say, is that Star Trek doesn't really apply to either of those. Star Trek is not bland, mass market appeal stuff, but at the same time, it's not a niche thing where you get intense devotion from a really small portion of people. A lot of people loved Star Trek, regardless of how sciencey, nerdy, or geeky they may have been. It had something for everybody, and they say that was the best kept, least understood secret of Star Trek. So first of all, Star Trek says something. There is significance here. You do need to grasp that. I would say that's actually a pretty basic thing. But it goes on to say here, the show contained at least one character, one plot or subplot, or thematic element designed for and to captivate one particular kind of viewer. So that means that, and by the way, this is entirely based on the original series. They were basically saying that in every episode, there really should have been at least one minor thing for any particular demographic of viewer. And I think that's impressive. Not easily done. So this is how Star Trek escaped the play it safe syndrome. It does not play it safe, but there is enough in it which shockingly good, that it can afford to give some offense and afford some criticism. So that in mind, let's talk about some of the show's most energizing tailored effects and how they struck viewers. And this is one thing I really appreciate, because I've never seen Kirk in this light. A lot of this chapter focuses on Kirk. Spock gets a lot of this book, so we'll cover him a little bit in more depth later on. But Captain James T. Kirk says right here, Kirk is the ideal man. And if you're my age or older, where Star Trek, the original series, was already on reruns when you entered into the universe, you're automatically going to compare him to, Picard and all that. And one thing that I think is a shame is we definitely remember Kirk as, that kind of ladies' man kind of archetype. That was the part of his reputation as a character that has really been most remembered in the minds of a lot of people, and that's a shame. Because while that's definitely one part of him, and not the best part, there is a lot of nobility in Kirk, which I don't think people are willing to recognize. And this book did a good job at summarizing that, and now that I've read it, I agree that Kirk is the ideal man. He's flawed, which is a contradiction if I'm claiming he's an ideal man. He is close to an ideal man. Kirk is unafraid of his emotions, but definitely masculine. He is aggressive without being brutal. He is compassionate without being weak. He is decisive without being officious. He is efficient without being rigid. He is a man who has come to terms with and mastered the super machines of his age, without losing his precious human characteristics. He serves in a quasi-military organization with fearsome, destructive power at his fingertips, power that could destroy whole planets at will. But he does not suffer from the push-button syndrome of old sci-fi horror stories about the man who launches atomic missiles at the enemy. For all his power, he is not paranoid. For him, an enemy is an adversary to be met with strength and even destroyed, if necessary, but not necessarily a villain with whom no reconciliation is possible. Peace really is his profession. His primary mission is alien contact, to seek out new life and new civilizations. So I just love that. Yeah, I would agree. That is what an ideal man looks like in a position of power. Like, he has destructive capabilities. The Enterprise was armed, but he didn't use it recklessly. And at the same time, he wasn't afraid to use force when he was in a position where there was no other choice. Even so, he was a man on a mission of peace. He is firm in his convictions, but he is able to get outside of his own prejudices, to think in new terms and redefine problems, and to see another one's point of view. Man, could we use more of that in the world today? He is firm in his convictions, we need to have that, but he is able to get outside of his own prejudices, to think in new terms, and to see another's point of view. Amen. Moving on here, he is capable of dealing with an enemy with respect for the individual, if not for his ideology. The decision of peace or war for the galaxy may rest in his hands, and it is safe there. So, I love that. Then he goes on to, the book talks about his sexuality, and, I'm going to gloss over that today. Because it does say, Kirk's repeated romances is Star Trek's worst fault. The one thing that ought to have changed when the show, that ought to be changed when the show was revived. And, that's pretty much how Picard goes, so well done on that. There's definitely one, here we go. Here was the thing I really didn't want to skip. He is not without faults. He has a temper, he is impetuous, he has a certain recklessness, again, with women and with the adventures he goes on, but he is a man who tries. And I like that. I really, really appreciate that. The other thing I really think is worth mentioning here, so when people complain about the realisticness of Star Trek, which, it's inevitable, one thing that constantly comes up is when you're the captain of a vessel, you don't go on away missions with your other top, aides. You send more expendable people down for dangerous situations. A captain's place is on the bridge. And while I don't think there's really any watertight argument against that is sensible, I do like what this book said that gives just a little more credence to the way Star Trek played out in that way. There is a non-military aspect to James Kirk's situation. His primary mission is alien contact, a delicate as well as dangerous business, and one which cannot be reduced to routine. There is absolutely no way he can sit on his bridge and get adequate information on which to make an executive decision. You don't send a second team to do that kind of job. Kirk and Spock, perish the thought, are expendable. The Enterprise can make it back to a starbase for a new captain and first officer better then it can blow its primary mission. That's food for thought. You may not agree with that. That still may ring untrue to you, but I kind of like the idea that yeah, the captain and the first officer, they keep going down to these planets because their first primary mission of alien contact is so significant that they need to be there, even if it puts the ship in danger. Losing its captain and first officer in one unfortunate away mission. Even that is preferable to blowing their mission because then humanity is on a bad footing with an alien civilization for indefinitely. So that it made sense to me. It's a new way to think about it. And again, you're free to disagree with that. It's not an airtight argument, but I liked it even so. I'm not sure there's too much more I want to talk about right here, but yeah. They do say that, Star Trek, they love their diversity, but it's balanced by the conviction that there are some truths that are universal. To be different is not to be wrong, but there are some things which are wrong and objectively demonstrated as wrong. Slavery being a classic example. The conviction that truth, even moral truth, is knowable is embodied in Kirk, who acts with moral confidence when he must act against something which he sees not merely as different, but fundamentally wrong. Both elements are necessary. If there is no objective truth, then there is no argument against murder, enslavement, and genocide. And the Federation needs a captain who will do what he must. And the one they have is Kirk. So I really appreciate that. I think it's nice to read Kirk in a positive light when it's kind of easy to pick on him because he's generally thought of as not as awesome as Spock. And again, he has negative qualities which have unfortunately stuck in our collective unconsciousness a little bit better than the nobility. But I do really like the idea of Kirk being a representation of the ideal man in a position of power and authority. What would that man be? And you can do better than Kirk, but only by a little bit. So that was the majority of Chapter 2. I may finish Chapter 2 in the next video, or I will power on to the next significant chapter, worthy of reflection. So thank you for watching, and may God bless you all.